So I can start the session. Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third session of the IYBN Biodiversity Forum. So this is an important session that talks on women in conservation and gender issues. Now, just before we start the session, there will be an icebreaker session with AHA slides. So just before that, I'd like to welcome our speakers, Tania Pimental and Archana Soreng, to the session. There are two speakers who will be taking over in just a few minutes. So before that, just to set the scene, to show how important it is that this issue is in the CBD framework as well as for post 2020 biodiversity framework, I just give a bit of introduction to it. So as you all know, we've seen every day that women and men in the world have specific roles in activities. So you see this every day in your normal life as well as in TV and in documentaries. You see women are primarily involved in collecting resources like fuel, wood, water, and therefore they have specialized knowledge in different areas of biodiversity and have different priorities and outlook when you compare to men. But even in spite of all of this, the role of women are often less visible than the role of men, and the degraded ecosystems further perpetuate the gender inequalities that exist by increasing the time women spend on collecting these resources. So therefore, it makes women even more vulnerable to the effects of biodiversity loss as well as the current climate crisis that is going on. So in order to address all of this, the UN Women and the Secretariat of CBD, that is the Convention on Biological Diversity, organized an expert session to integrate gender responsiveness and gender perspective into the post-2020 global biodiversity framework. So this took place on 11th and 12th of April 2019 in New York. Now, this is important because the preamble of CBD itself states the important role women play in participation of women at all levels, including policy making and its implementation. Even the 2030 agenda that includes the sustainable developmental goals includes gender equality and women and girls perspective as a sustainable development goal 5. Now, there are a few key components of gender that brings about gender responsiveness within the post-2020 global biodiversity framework, which are recognizing and enhancing women agency, participation, and leadership, promoting and protecting women's rights and access to resources, as well as enhancing and ensuring equitable benefits and human well-being. So in order to take this further, we have our speakers. So before that, just to get the session started, we have the AHA slides, and Jonathan will be putting in the link in the chat box, and then I can share the screen that will give all of your responses. So
there's a link in the chat box.
Yeah, so he's putting the link, and I'll just share my screen here. Yeah, I think it's visible. Just a second. Yeah, if all of you could enter this code and then start. So this is the first question that says, what do we see that tells us we have room to improve our gender equality? So what this essentially means is, like, what are the instances in your daily life that you see that makes you think that there is bias, gender bias or gender inequality? It can be in your daily life or something that you've seen on TV, a documentary, a film. So what is it that has struck a chord with you that makes you think that there has been gender inequality? I think the code is in the chat box. I don't see anybody in the room. It would be great to have your views and opinion. I'll give this one more, like 30-second one, and probably the next question you can. So this is just your perspective. Like, what do you think? Where have you seen gender inequality? Where do you think an intervention is necessary? So just basic. It can be just few words. You can express it in few words. It will be great to have your opinion and your insights before we actually like start the session. Okay.
I think people are entering their responses. It's
Okay, I'm not okay. I'll just stop this screen sharing and try again.
Your screen sharing is, we can see that, but on the top of the screen at the right corner, you can see a present button. You have to click
Yeah,
on
I
that.
click that. I'll just try again. Just a second. Yeah, okay, 1 second. There's a, yeah, 1 second. Yeah, 1 second. Is it visible now? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So thank you. Yeah, we've been seeing your responses. So yeah, patriarchy everywhere. That's true. Women do more work. Yeah, true. Leadership roles, opportunities, stereotyping job opportunities, in decision-making bodies, cravings for a male child. Very true in India also. I think most of the world, Latin America also. Openness of new generation, education, job opportunities and pay, in decision-making bodies, freedom to express. I think these are all very good points. Yeah, I think this sets the scene very well for our speakers to continue. So I'll go on to the next question, which is, what do you think are the causes of gender inequality? So what do you think are the root causes, or what do you think are like the ones that are further contributing to gender inequality? It can be anything. It can be root causes, or it can be what you think are the major factors that lead to gender inequality. Ancient culture and belief, yeah, true. Patriarchy, I think patriarchy fits most in most topics or in the most issues is the major issue. Religion, yeah. I see 16 people here, yeah. Unconscious bias, yeah, very true. Upbringing, caste, yeah. I mean, why do you think, like, what aspect of upbringing, like, do you think favoritism at the childhood level, like in terms of siblings, brothers and sisters, is that a major contributing factor? Like, why upbringing specifically? Caste, safety and security concerns, okay. Internalized misogynism, true. Femininity, okay. Who wrote femininity? Like, can you be more specific? Why femininity? Like, what aspect of feminism do you think is the root cause? The way it's portrayed by some people, or the way it's conceived by the perception of few people are, like, what is the major, why femininity? Biological phenomena, okay. That's an interesting view. Secure, okay, yeah. Power, okay. Attitude and mindsets, okay. Chauvinism, okay. Yeah. Physical inability, okay. That's controversial. Then yeah, attitude, mindsets, yeah, okay. So I think we'll go on to the next question. This is the final one for this pre session AHA slides. So do you think women representation in conservation is low? So what is your general opinion? We'll see what the majority of you think here. It can be yes, it can be no, it can be like, it can be, you can be slightly, you can be on the fence, like not sure, maybe. You do see women in conservation, just not the, you don't hear their voices. It can be anything, like whatever you feel. Just, it does not have to be yes or no. It can be in gray in between also. So absolutely not sure. Yes, no. I was introduced by women. Okay, that's good. No, not sure. Okay, not sure is the majority of the people seem to be saying not sure. No, it is not being recognized. Okay. So you mean there are women, but just not, they're not getting recognized, or they're not getting the recognition that they deserve? Is that what you mean by saying no, it's not being recognized? Nah, okay. Yes, okay. I was not in the limelight, okay. Not part of committees, okay. I think we'll give this 15 seconds more, and then no voice of women, okay. You think the voice of women are not heard, okay. Not sure, no, slightly, okay. On the fence. It's good. It's good to have different views. I mean, it does not have to be clearly defined. You can be unsure, so that's absolutely fine. Okay. Okay, they're coming in. Rich or poor, okay. Rich, you mean rich or poor? Doesn't matter if women are rich or poor, either way they don't get the benefits, or is that what you mean by rich or poor? Sometimes no support, okay. Okay, keep those answers coming. I think since it took a little time for me to adjust to this, I think we'll move on to the next uh, part, which is the introduction of speakers. And it will be done by our student representative here, Priyansh. So the first speaker is Archana Soreng. So Priyansh will introduce the speaker, and then Archana, the floor is yours. You can take it from there.
Am I audible?
You are audible.
Am I? Okay. So good evening to all the attendees and the dignitaries. Today our session is about women in conservation and gender issues. And to enlighten us here about this topic, we have Ms. Archana Soreng as one of our speakers, who has been a role model for many of the youngsters in the field of environment conservation. Ms. Soreng is a member of United Nations Secretary General's Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change. She is an environmental activist belonging to the indigenous Haria tribe from the Bihaband village of Rajgangpur district in Sundargarh, Orissa. She has been working for awareness about climate change and documentation, preservation, and promotion of the traditional knowledge and practices of indigenous communities. And throughout her life, she has been active in the Indian Catholic Youth Movement. Ms. Soreng has been selected as one of the 7 members of Youth Advisory Group on Climate Change, established by the Secretary General of the United Nations as a part of United Nations Youth Strategy. She has been working as the research officer at Vasantha, Odisha. Indian Youth Biodiversity Network is delighted to have you in this session today. I request Ms. Archana Soreng ma'am to now take over the session and get us to know more about today's theme. Thank you.
Thank you, Priyansh, for your kind introduction. And I'm so happy to be here on this session with my colleague Tanya. And we are here to discuss about women in conservation and gender issues. Well, talking about women in conservation being from an indigenous communities, I would like to emphasize and share a few of my perspective that how communities and women specifically from the indigenous communities and the rural and local communities have been engaged in community forest management and protection in terms of biodiversity conservation, whether it is in terms of land, whether it is in terms of forest.
We seem to have lost up to now. think we'll give it a few minutes to see if she can come, she can reconnect back.
I apologize for this technical glitch. I think Archana is right now at the place where there is a cyclone alert. So I think there might be some power cut or something. So let's wait for some time and see if we can get back.
So by then, like if you have any more views on the AHA slide questions that you had previously, I think we can have a conversation in the chat box also. Introduce yourself, like where are you from? We'll give it one more minute and then I think Tanya can.
Archana is trying to reconnect. I think Archana is trying to reconnect.
Yeah, she's here, she's here.
So we'll just wait for some time. But
yeah, hi
great.
everyone. So sorry, there's been power cut in my area because we have been waiting, or it's kind of announcement in terms of cyclone. So there has been a slight storm condition, but yes, we'll continue with our discussions. So yeah, when I was saying that about the indigenous communities and the rural communities, so the traditional knowledge and practices of the indigenous communities and the rural communities have been very crucial in terms of forest conservation and in terms of biodiversity conservation in general. And also, if I say this, also how it is in terms of embedded in their cultural and cultural values and their way of living also. And that is when I strongly feel that I would like to share a few of the traditional practices and community-led initiatives which I have witnessed in the tribal communities, and also which I have witnessed while I was working with the communities, is that there has been instances of forest fire, as we see in Odisha and in many parts of India. So during summers, it is usually the women of the tribal communities who have been forming groups and who have been going to patrolling the forest areas and also the biodiversity areas. So it is the women level collectives which they have formed in terms of community-led forest management practices, wherein they are taking stick with them, and then they are going and ensuring that they are making fire lines in the forest area, specifically during the summers, and preventing the forest fires, because when the dried leaves are fallen in the summer areas, it tends to be more enabling to ensure that there is spread of fire. So these are certain practices which the women have been engaged in terms of local level in terms of preventing forest fires, which has been very, very crucial in terms of preventing forest fires in their areas. And also I would like to narrate one of the story which I have witnessed here in our community areas, is that in 1980s, when there was too much of deforestation happening in the villages, and there was a lot of massive deforestation and felling of trees by timber mafias. So at that point of time also, women leadership took charge of the community areas, wherein 10 to 11 villages across the regions came together here in Odisha in Nayagarh district, and where they have been protecting the destroyed forest, and which has led that the forest which was destroyed by the timber mafias and for extractive developmental projects, but because of continuous forest patrolling and because of continuous community-led forest management, now that area has been totally rejuvenated, and now there are a lot of biodiversity, whether it is trees, whether it is animals, whether it is birds. So it also shows that when there was deforestation at that point of time, so when there was rain, all the sands used to get collected in the agriculture field of the community area. So it is also showing that how there is loss of biodiversity is also affecting the loss of agriculture and livelihood. And at the same point of time, now because they have rejuvenated the areas, there is no more soil erosion happening in that areas, and that is where the livelihood is also secured. So all I want to emphasize here is how women in conservation is not only protecting the biodiversity and the nature, but it is also contributing to a sustainable goal, and also poverty elevation, and also ensuring to a sustained way of livelihood. So these are certain initiatives and practices. And also another thing which if I say is that there is a practice called Thenga Pali in Odisha, which is practiced by the women collectives here. Thenga means stick and Pali means turn. So initially when there was a lot of timber mafias and lot of mining happening in 1980s and 1980s, so at that point of time that women were kind of at that point of time, because timber mafias were destroying the forest, and there was a lot of conflict amongst the community-led forest protection committees and the timber mafias. So there was conflict between men and the timber mafias. And at that point of time, men also felt that it is because the tussle is happening because it's men and men having conflict. And then they thought that it is very important that we should bring women in terms of conservation, so that if women's are there, so because of the stricter laws, the timber mafias will not impact a lot in terms of the areas, will not destroy the areas. But of late, what happened that women also realized that till when will be there in terms of protecting the forest without having the decision making powers. And that is where in women also started asserting their powers, that it is not that for mere a kind of protecting the forest or protecting you from the timber mafias will be here protecting the forest, but we will be protecting the forest because of our own relationship with the forest, because how we are connected with the forest. And that is when since then 30 to 40 years of conservation and practices that women have been protecting that forest in areas which has been rejuvenated. So in this Thenga Pali practices, what is happening? So women get up early in the morning at 3 a.m., do all their household areas, and at the same point of time, they also feed the family members and then go to the forest for forest patrolling. And the forest patrolling, they take the stick and they go for forest patrolling, wherein they are making noises with the stick, so that when they make noise with the stick while moving, people, those who are timber mafias or others, will be afraid of them, that women are coming and protecting. So it is also kind of sense of message which is going to across all the areas, that women are protecting, and if we are caught, they'll be punishing, because they have their own laws and rules and regulation of how to punish them, whether it is in terms of bringing them to the village and telling them, making them right that I'll not come to this forest and destroy the forest, or whether it is a kind of ensuring that certain kind of fines or certain kind of remuneration is taking from the people, those who are being affected. So the perspective here is, why are those women here protecting the forest since years? Why it is that why they are taking so much effort, like they are doing household works also, they are protecting the forest also. So here, if we try to understand there's a lot of issue of labor also, like how these contribution of women is also not acknowledged, and they are also kind of overburdened. But this is also, if you see from the community members, if you interact with them, it is also because of their strong connection with the nature and with the forest, which they want to do it. But at the same time, what can be done for them in terms of compensation or in terms of recognizing or acknowledging thing? Because compensation is something which we will never be able to do in terms of their labor, but what can be done in terms of acknowledgement is will be very crucial, is to recognize the rights over the land and forest. And also at the same time, it will be recognizing and giving them due participation in the decision making spaces, which will be very, very crucial. So the reason behind sharing these kind of short stories and short practices there is that, and also the women change the stick. Like today, those who are going, those 4 women, those who are going to protect, are taking the stick, and then they come back and keep the stick in front of the other women. So in this way, in the rotational way, the entire women of that areas are leading. So it is very important that when in terms of conservation, women are in the front line, but when it is in the decision making spaces, there are no women representation. So the reason of sharing these stories are that there are many such stories and such practices which are being practiced by the women in the rural area, but there are no documentation on that. We are not aware about it. So the thing is, women are in the front line in terms of contribution and in terms of biodiversity conservation. But where are these women when we are talking about policy making and policy emphasizing participation? So I think it would be very crucial in terms of ensuring that there is participation and decision making spaces given to the women from the rural areas. And apart from that, I would like to share another kind set of perspective, and then I'll be winding up, is that when we are talking women in terms of conservation, it is also very important to understand that women who are engaged in conservation practices are also deeply impacted by the developmental projects which are happening in their area. Like for example, the example which I gave, that how women have been contributing things, and now in that place only, if the land is taken away from there, as in many places there are already land grabbing happening. So this land grabbing is not only taking the women and the communities out from the areas, they're also taking away the protectors and defenders of the conservation or the biodiversity. So which is again very problematic and challenging. And the same the same way, it is also very important to understand that when there is a factory or a mining company set up, it is not only it is also affecting the women's safety and freedom, because other communities are coming to the rural areas, and this is preventing the women to access those spaces, like the spaces which they used to earlier access, they are not able to access that. There are cases of sexual atrocities, and also there is cases wherein they are affected by health because there is lots of pollution and there is lots of discharge which is coming out, whether it is water or whether it is air, in terms of these mining areas, which is not only affecting their health but also the children's health. Also there is many cases of widow which we are seeing, as then most of the communities husbands are being getting jobs in the company. So it is also very much in terms of the health, economic, and also much more in terms of the safety issues which is related in terms of women in conservation. If we see that even though women are the ones who are front lines in terms of conservation, but yet they are the ones who are most affected in terms of the health. They are the ones who are most affected because of the economic crisis, and they are the ones who are most affected. Like for example, the women, those who are leading are very, the important source of women is also minor forest produce, whether it is entrepreneur skills or whether it is in terms of forest based livelihood. So all these initiatives where women are leading is also at time at stake because of the extractive developmental projects and also the threats they are undergoing. So at the end, what I feel at this point of time, what is very crucial for us in terms of when we see women in conservation is also, it is very important to take into consideration that women have been excelling in a lot of fields, whether it is in field of journalism, whether it is in field of academia, whether it is field of civil society organization or research spaces. So there is a lot of prejudice attached with women's participation in different sphere. But what we feel is like women are excelling in different spheres and are doing good in terms of different spheres, because it is also very important that those who are doing in the grassroots level front line, how we amplify those voices, how we support those voices, and how we ensure that there is solidarity of the voices. So I feel the major issue as of now is about how do we create opportunities for women to participate in the conservation efforts? How do we ensure that there is meaningful participation of the women and there is no token participation of the women? And also at the same time, there's an issue of language, that how language barrier can be addressed, because women, those who are in the front lines, they may not be able to speak the language which we are speaking, but how we are ensuring that there is support and enabling environment given that we are able to hear them and they are being able to participate. Apart from that, it is very, very crucial to ensure that there is safe and enabling spaces. So what are the legal supports which we are having? What are the enabling laws which we are having? Like we have Forest Right Act, which is very crucial, and for the first time it gives recognition to women and women right over the land, but it is still not being implemented, and there are still being challenges in terms of its implementation. So how do we advocate for more of its implementation, even though we have good laws, but the challenge remains in the implementation? So all I would like to say here, it is there is a need that we keep on engaging in this discussion of women and conservation, wherein there is a very much need to emphasize the rural initiatives of the women and what rural frontliners are being doing. And at the same time, it is also very important to emphasize what the urban areas initiatives are and how women and school children are also being engaged with the college students. So it is again coming down to education and how we ensure that these educations are being emphasized, wherein biodiversity is embedded in the education, and we are being able to work on it from a very early stage. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Archana, for that. That is wonderful. That is a wonderful speech. I mean, insightful, informative. It opened our eyes, in fact, to most of the issues that are happening on ground. Thank you so much for that. That was wonderful. Now, I request my colleague Bharat to introduce Tanya, our next speaker for the session.
Thank you, Shruti. Tanya Pimental, who trained as an architect, she has worked as project manager for some of the most relevant architecture firms in Mexico, Austria, and Germany. Well, her creative side has led her to focus on developing projects for creative industries that combine the thematic conjuncture of pop culture, technology, activism, science, and aesthetics. She's a founder of Meme Fest, the first international viral culture festival in Mexico, and she was the director of Pichakucha Nights at CDMX, and I had the pleasure of participating in Pichakucha format, where she was the host in back 2016 in Cancun. Currently, she is the founder of Women Index, a digital platform that reunites women across professions to promote and make them visible in order to have better professional opportunities. So now I request Tanya to address the session. Tanya, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for the presentation, and it's very nice joining you here with all of you, like all across the planet. So thank you very much. Good evening to you. It's good morning to me. And I'm from Mexico. I'm very, very happy to be here. And like Brad said, I'm currently leading this project that it's a digital index that seeks to make visible and promote women's professional women work. We work a lot in visibility. So what Shruti was saying about that women are not visible, it's something that resonates a lot with the work that we do daily. We also do this to create connections between women, because we also think that those kind of connections are what is said to move us forward, and also inspire other women, young people in general, and girls and boys to create their own professional path and help boost their careers through training programs. So thank you very much for having me. And I would like to start this talk by saying a riddle. Maybe you all know it, but if you don't, maybe it will be just a little bit shocking. And it's that about a man and his son, and they are in a terrible accident, and they are rushed to the hospital in critical care. And the doctor looks at the boy and exclaims, "I cannot operate this boy. He's my son." So how could this be? And this is a riddle that I was faced with a couple of years ago, and I'm very ashamed to say that I couldn't find the answer. Like, if the father had already died, I don't know if you know the answer, if you know this riddle, but the answer is that it's somebody say, yeah, Shruti, it's the boy's mother, right? So I don't know if some of you didn't thought about it like that, but for me, in that time, it was shocking, because I consider myself a feminist like for so long now, and it just didn't cross my mind. And what happens to most of all men and women is that that has a scientific name, and it's an unconscious bias or an implicit bias. And that happens, or that the origin of this type of bias or prejudice dates back to early childhood, when we as children learn about the world around us, and we have these neural associations that are being created in our brain. We relate concepts and memories in an unconscious way. So that's why we have this, and I'll be talking more about education, but I think like the basis for the project and for us is that women need to be more visible, so that it's not like this typical image that we see about a doctor or a surgeon and then a nurse, and then we associate like those roles just to women and men, and we have like that kind of bias from when we're little. So it's not our fault, it's just that we're programmed to think that way. And I think the best way to portray the reality that I will be talking about is to talk about numbers. I will be talking to you about some numbers in Mexico, and I know that it seems far away, but I think these numbers also portray the reality in Latin America, because we are so close and we have similar conditions, but also the world in general, because I think we all agree that there is a long way that we have yet to walk towards equality. So I would like to start by saying that in Mexico City, the population is divided in 48.8% for men and 51.2% for women. So women are the majority in Mexico and in Latin America. I know some countries in Europe, and the global percentage is a bit more for men. But in Latin America, we're mostly women. So this is also for me a key element, because it cannot be like we are not a minority, so we are more than half of the population, and still we have all these blocks and things that are limiting our progress. And also, like in studies in Mexico, this since 2019, like women in higher education in Mexico have exceeded men. So in comparison, like 50.5% of women are graduating compared to 49.5% of men. So we are like there in terms of studying. And in graduate programs, we make up as women for 52.1% of students. So I want to make here like a special note. It's important to say that there are still some lacks in some careers, such as only 14.5% of women obtain degrees in STEM. So it's science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, compared to 37.6% of men. So we can see there, like we are at the same level at studies, like we are graduating even more women than men, but still there are lags in this kind of careers. And just as a comparison, now that we have this global pandemic and these subjects have emerged more, women constitute in Mexico 85% of all the nursing positions in Mexico. So again, we are viewed more as nurses than as doctors. And having a degree in Mexico, it's not a guarantee to have a decent work. So a lot of you were saying that women multitask and they do a lot of stuff. But also the labor force participation of women is far below than of men and is very low compared to other countries. Only Turkey and Italy have lower participation in the labor force of women, according to OECD. And in Latam region, only Guatemala has lower participation than Mexico. Our participation is just 45% in 2019 and is dropping because of pandemic compared to 77% of men. So that is a gap of 32%. And it's important to note because, I mean, we're celebrating that, okay, we're 45%, but if we compare it to that of men, we can see that there's still a huge gap. So it's a small wins, but we still have a lot of way to walk. So far in here, we already lost half of the women with a professional degree from the workforce in a country that there are more women than men. And of these women that are part of the workforce, only 8% of them are promoted to vice presidents and only 3% are promoted to the executive committee. And I mean, that also happens just talking about conservation with the women in conservation in Mexico. Like it is said that from all the forests in Mexico, 70% approximately are common land, but only 26% of those land is owned by women. So this is also like rural communities are more than half of men. So more than half the percentage of the population. So also in those kind of communities, only 8% of presidents of the common land are occupied by women. So we're still talking, and again, talking about women having less access to these positions of decision. And that is key because, again, it's a world like we're mostly 50-50. So why are we not taking place in this kind of decisions? And that, of course, impacts in some of the things that already Archana talked about, that because we don't have that access to those kind of positions of power, we don't have like a financial independence, and that of course leads to so many other problems that affect women in the current world. So this is compared, like returning to this workforce data, that only 8% of women are promoted to vice presidents and only 3% to the executive committee. It's compared to men, they are promoted 21% and 18% respectively. So men in general are promoted more often than women in all roles and at all levels. And that is a fact. And I think it's reflection of this male design world that we live in. So there are many factors that influence having such low numbers of representation of women in the labor market, and very, very few numbers in decision-making positions. Among them are that women with people in their care, like children, the elderly, or sick people, they face prejudice by companies and are ignored for promotions and recruitment. In Mexico, we have legal barriers that persist, and the law does not explicitly prohibit potential employers from asking a woman about her family situation during the hiring process. And this is something that it doesn't happen with men. So men are not asked about if they are planning to get pregnant or to have a kid in 2 years, and women they are asked that. So that kind of starts excluding them from getting a decent job or getting higher in the corporate ladder. In Mexico, we also have a lack of support of programs that focus on guaranteeing women's rights. We recently had a reduction of resources to the program of childcare for working mothers. So they cut the budget to just under half, and that has been catastrophic because it's just assumed that women will take care of kids. And if this kind of facilities are just cut, then they just stay at home and they just abandon their job. So the fact that this labor participation has increased some percentages point in 2020 does not mean that women have stopped performing all the other care tasks to which they are subjected. So we know that this role of caregiver has increased exponentially with the effects of pandemic. I see it with friends and women I care in Mexico. We perform more than 75% of unpaid housework and childcare. So being a working woman in Mexico means a lot of work, more work than we should do. So it also means a lack of opportunities and the threat to our mental health that has been happening during pandemic by wanting to juggle our professional or personal careers, our family care, our household responsibilities. And also we all know these numbers that women are paid less than men, but in Mexico, I think it's even more when you start getting higher roles. So as you get higher roles, we are like in 18.8% of less pay than men. But when you get an executive level job, you earn up to 22% less than your male counterpart. So the law here requires equal pay for equal work, but it does not establish like the broader principle of equal pay for men and women that work for equal value. So I think this panorama is just devastating. Like we're losing women from education to the workforce and then to the higher levels of decision-making positions. It's also hard to say that in Mexico, a lot of women work in the informal economy. So up to 60% of women work in this kind of economy, being informal, of course, earning less, saving less, and they have higher risk of falling into poverty. We have made progress, but according to a lot of media and studies, the little progress that we have made will take years to recover now due to pandemic. A lot of girls are interrupting their studies and they may never come back to school. A lot of women are losing their jobs and they may never return to the workforce. So I think that's why I think this kind of forums and with so many young people, it's so important because we need to get back on track. Also during this pandemic, a lot of women, like up to 3.2 million women lost their jobs in Mexico City. A lot of them regained their jobs in December, but they lost it again in January of 2021. And yes, these women that lose their access to paid work, they lose their economic freedom. They are much more exposed to violence. During pandemic, 1 in 10 households in Mexico reported some type of domestic violence. And I don't know how is it there, but in Mexico City, we have a very painful number that is rising every time. And we have up to 11 women who are murdered in our country every day due to their gender. So a lot of them are not classified as feminist sites. I don't know if that's the word in English, but so very few of them result in a conviction. And I think we all agree that having equal paid work helps us women to have a financial freedom. We can also bargain power in our homes. We can also distribute the household tasks and expenses, and that also lowers the physical violence. And I think that also for women in conservation, if they have a saying and a voice, and they are the owners of their own land, and they can then take care of the forest and stuff, like we give them the chance to be present, to be visible, and just to share all that they have to give. So why I think this is important, and this is talking about like a broader gender equality issue. I think this is, for starter, a fundamental human right. So this is a foundation for building a peaceful, prosperous, and sustainable world. And promoting gender equality is essential in all areas of a healthy society. So yeah, I think also like one of the reasons that we need to think about, like, it's not just for the sake or the good of women, that should be enough, because like I said, we are mostly like half and half of the population, but we should also see it as a benefit, like an economic benefit for all of us, because increasing the participation of women in labor force would increase our income as a country up to 70%, and that is like the equivalent to $800 billion. So increasing women participation, getting them to be on the higher levels on this places where they can take and make decisions, it's just crucial for us all to progress as humanity. So the measurements that we implement for this economic recovery of Mexico and the world must, above all things, put women, young people and girls at the center. We need to develop support programs. We need to develop loans and credits, legislation that guarantees there will be non-discrimination in the workplace. Also, the implementation of this legislation, because it's not worthy, or it's not useful if there is just written and we don't have it, like it's not there, it's not happening. We need social safety nets and the recognition of unpaid work. So we have a lot of work to do. Maybe you know this number that the World Economic Forum predicted way before the COVID-19 crisis, and they said that at the current rate of progress, it would take us up to 257 years to close this economic gender gap. And that just breaks my heart, because it means that none of us that are here today will see that. We will not live to see that. And more of that, like I have a niece, and that means that even she will not see that happen. So I think we are at a great moment, because we have this urgency to fix that, to be quicker, to just make it faster, and it's an opportunity to see this crisis as what it is, as some moment that we can just take to grow and change this. And it's necessary that we all join our forces to achieve this, on a personal level, on an institutional level, on a governmental level. So I think in general, we should all demand better laws, better programs, better salaries, an equitable division of duties, and higher positions. And I would like just to make to end this calling to all of you, because I have a lot of faith in the youth. I think we still have a lot to do. Like, I don't mean that we as older people shouldn't do anything, but I think we're doing our part, trying to fix like what we already have. But I have so much faith in youth, because I see how they just think differently and they demand their rights. So I would make just an invitation for you, that I know that you're already interested in these topics because you're here today, that you keep on fighting and you keep on voicing whatever you feel like it's the right thing to do. Sorry, it's a truck. 1 second. A very loud truck. And yeah, and in general, just keep on pushing and just make all of that, all of the women visible. I think that is a key, and that is what we're trying to do through Women Index, just saying like, we're here. There are a lot of women and we need more visibility. And I think more visibility will just mean that we have more women at the workforce, at the workplace. We will have more women in higher positions, decision-making positions. And in general, we will have more representation, so that we don't have this bias that we saw at the beginning with the riddle, that we can create a community and a world where we don't have those bias and those prejudice against women, and that we can live in an equal world, because I think it's just what it's right and what it's fair to all of us. So thank you very much for listening to me. I am seeing the comments, and I look forward to any question that you have. And Thank you very much, and greetings from Mexico.
Thank you so much, Tanya. I think that's something that all of us here in India can resonate to in terms of it. And I think the statistics and the numbers are very important to shine the light on such issues. Because otherwise, I don't think many people will understand or take it seriously enough. So thank you so much for that information and your perspective on this and for the work that you do. Thank you so much. Now I'll pass it on to Sudha for the Q&A session. And feel free to type in your questions in the chat box, or even you can unmute and speak.
Okay. Archana and Tanya, I thank you again for sharing your views and insights. So I think I would request the participants to put in their questions in the chat box, or just raise your hand. You can unmute yourself and ask the question. I think the first question that we have is from Shalini. So Shalini, would you like to ask the question directly?
Sure. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yeah, thank you. So my question is to Archana. Archana, like, thank you so much for I mean, from even on day one, I think your personal narratives of the stories have really been very, very helpful. So my question is around, ecofeminist movements, and like ecofeminism as a theory has been talked about a lot by Vandana Shiva and everybody else, even in the global north. So and today when we're talking about women in conservation, it is all the more, like, how do you see ecofeminism and the politics of, women in India, and is it very different from global north? And how do you see that movement in future in India? Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Shalini, for your question. So on those take, I would like to share that what binds us today at this moment in terms of whether we say women in conservation and ecofeminism in terms of the biodiversity conservation is that if we see that how nature in general has been treated and how it has been degraded, like we all are talking about rebuilding our relationship with nature is something which is being talked about. And at the same time, it is also a need to be acknowledged that how over the years women have been treated and how there has been oppression over the women. So it is also very important to see that how over the years, even though there has been oppression, even though there has been atrocity of women, it is the women who have been contributing immensely towards the conservation and nature. And that is what it becomes very crucial at this point of time, that we acknowledge the contribution made by the women, and also at the same time contribute, also acknowledge that how crucial is earth and safety and protection and revive and rejuvenation of the earth for the existence of the human being. And we need to go beyond the thought that that we are something superior to the earth, or we are superior to the conservation or the elements of the biodiversity. And that is where it comes, that collective perspective, where in a vicious circle we are looking that we all are element of nature. And that is where I feel from our indigenous perspective, it is also said that we are not mere part of nature. We are nature is something which we see, and that is which we build on, that how crucial it is for us to believe that we are not mere part of nature and we are nature. And that is when it is very crucial for us to take into consideration and protect nature, as well as also assert the identity of ours, and also assert spaces wherein being sharing that how crucial it is for you women to be in the decision making spaces. And I would also like to reiterate that it is just no more token representation of women in the decision making spaces, or whether it is in terms of biodiversity conservation spaces. And it has to be actual and meaningful participation, wherein women are not only being heard, but our perspective and our proposals are also being implemented would be very crucial. And if I see if if I connect with my colleague and my friend from Brazil, we also share that there are certain issues which are again still persistent there, which is also persistent in India. So what I feel is that if we talk about indigenous communities and rural communities across the globe, we all are facing the same issues and challenges, and in terms of nature conservation, whether it is in terms of atrocity or whether it is in terms of extractive developmental projects. But what is that it may happen that the degree and kind is different in terms of how we are facing the challenges, but the challenges also remains pretty much similar, is something which I would like to say. And also another perspective which I would like to say, that when we are sharing about the global north and global south perspective, Southeast Asia and Asia in general has been impacted by a lot of biodiversity crisis and impacts of climate crisis. And that is where it is very important to ensure that the women's safety and women participation is crucial, because they are the ones who are most in the front line, but they are the ones who are most affected by the crisis.
Yeah, thank you so much, Archana. Thank you.
Thank you, Archana, for the answer. And Tanya, would you like to talk about eco-feminist movement in context of Mexico? Would you? How far people are accepting the idea? How far is it prevalent in Mexico?
Yeah, I think it's widely also getting more momentum. So I think it's something that it's being recognized, that it's being more adopted, and that it's being more seen as regular. So I also think in Mexico we have a lot of people and a lot of women are just going to other countries to prepare and to learn more, and some of them like feel the like the obligation or this feeling that they need to come back and help their countries, like in terms of conservation or science or other themes. So I think we're like advancing in that subject also to be seen as something more equity, but as Archana said, also like we need to recognize that work even more, and just be conscious of all the work that women do in these areas.
Thank you so much. Sindhura, you also had a question. I think both the speakers can answer it. Sindhura, yeah.
Hi, thank you both for giving us this talk and sharing your experiences with us. I was just curious to know, a lot of times, when people talk about empowerment, they usually use education as a silver bullet, and they say, okay, fine, education is the way to go, and once you educate people, people get empowered. But I was just wondering, what kind of other bottom-up approaches do we have in our toolkit that can help rural women to empower themselves?
Okay, Tanya, you can go first, and then Archana.
Okay. Yeah, I think, and thank you for the question, that I think when we talk about education, it's not about like you just educate them and there is the empowerment and that's it. Like it's obvious that we live in a society and in this male design world that we talked about. But I think, and I mentioned it, like it's not just about educating, it's just about shaping laws and making strategies and policies and programs that that affect this women's life, and just getting to, I think what it's very important is giving them like access to credits and to healthcare and to just all the things they need to have the same opportunities as men. I think that is the kind of empowerment that I would think of, because it's true that we have access to less economic opportunities, being an investment, being a credit. So the financial liberty, I think it's what gives this freedom of decision. And I see it in Mexico, like when women don't have that financial freedom, they depend of a man, and then they kind of have to do what he wants, and that just leads to a lot of violence and a lot of kids. Maybe they don't want to have kids anymore, but it's just what the man wants. So I think giving that economic freedom to women, giving them access to these credits, to these loans, and also working on strategies, long-term strategies, that it's not just like in Mexico happens, that a government finishes and then everything finishes with that and there is no continuity. So we need to think this in the long term, that it's just bigger than any governor or president. It just needs to change, and there needs to be this continuity. And so we can think about education at the long term, and that will, I think, just change the perception of the new generations, and it will stop the perpetuation of this male scene or male bias that we all have. That would be my contribution.
Archana?
Yeah, I think so. Before moving on to what are the other opportunities and strategies and what needs to be done, I would also like to speak about a little bit more about education per se, because I strongly feel that education is also something which needs to be understood in a very deeper level, in terms of, because the current education system which we have is mostly ignorant of the indigenous and the traditional knowledge and practices of the indigenous communities, how they are protecting forest and what relationship they have with the forest. So there is also a tendency wherein it is they need to be taught rather than they need to be listened, which is prevalent. Tribal community need to be taught to be empowered, tribal community need to be told this, they are not aware of this. So I think it is very also important to see it from a lens of where then listening to them, what they have to offer, and encouraging them. So it will be also that model of education which is very crucial. So at the same time, we also feel that it is very important in terms of understanding that how education system should be is also a very important question to be thought of. And I strongly feel when we are saying it's not climate change, it is structural change, these all factors come into it, like how deep rooted structure have always been in terms of like indigenous communities are this way and this is this way of functioning and that way of functioning. So it is also very important that how education does not become a tool of oppression, rather it becomes a tool of empowering them. And when I say that at times people are made feel vulnerable because of the imposition which is happening. So that is what I want to say, is that how education curriculum can be more uh, varied and more versatile in terms of incorporating the perspective of the indigenous communities and rural and local communities in terms of biodiversity, which is again we need to advocate for it, we need to work on it. And that is why we all are saying about climate education is important in terms of the curriculum, and we are pushing forward. And that is where now the entire globally also there is discussion that in the climate education how crucial it is to have the indigenous perspective and indigenous worldview in terms of climate education or biodiversity conservation. So this is it in terms of education, which I would like to say. And also moving ahead, I would strongly feel that it is also very important that, as Tanya rightly said, economic empowerment is one of the very crucial ways. And I see specifically that, women, those who are, like as I said, how women are patrolling forest, how women are being engaged in forest protection. There are lots and lots of funds which are being given to the departments to do that work, right? When the community themselves are doing that work, why it is not termed as a job remuneration for the communities? And why does that finance does not come to the community members for their inflow? So what I feel is that the work which the community members are doing needs to be recognized in a way, and the finance which is being channelized should come to the communities, should come to the Gram Sabha. And that is where the real participation will start, and that is where empowerment will also happen, because it is ultimately because of the income and livelihood people are looking for other options, right? Whether it is migration happening, whether it is other source of livelihood. So when the because of the way of living and because of the conservation contribution towards the contribution, because of the contribution towards the conservation, if it is recognized and those finance are being given to the communities, that would be really helpful. And for that matter, I also strongly feel that, many a times we get job opportunities to go in the grassroots level and work for the grassroots levels. So these are certain kind of job opportunities work. Why not give this job opportunities for the young people, the young women of the indigenous and rural communities who know about their community and who themselves are working? And that will also come as a job for them, and a job which is much more in terms of coming from within the perspective and in terms of economic empowerment also. And when I say in economic empowerment, it is also like forest based livelihood. Like India, minor forest produce and forest-based livelihood contribute immensely towards the GDP. So why not these kind of which we say green economy is also pushed forward, like whether it is making leaf plates or whether it is making out bags out of grass, whether it is making furniture out of grass, all this eco-friendly initiative and techniques which communities are engaged in. Why not women are given due credit and also given the opportunity to establish all those things? So I think that is also another way how we can ensure that women are able to establish themselves in terms of their own entrepreneur skills. And even here also, it should not come from a place of they need to be taught this and that and they can earn money. Let us see that what they're already doing and what support we can do in terms of skill capacity development and what technology support we can do. And apart from that, I also feel what is very important is to ensure that how we can push forward for more and more participation in terms of political participation. Because there is a tendency, just a very common thing, even if you go to a village, you'll just seek, can I talk to the village leader? And then there is a tendency that you definitely go towards the male to understand how is the village, how is the things happening. And that is how it comes down to why the tendency is not that you're going to women representative understanding the village. So it has a lot of to do about the approach, how we want women to speak up and all those things. So it is also coming down to in the local panchayat level election or in the grassroots level, whatever election and political participation opportunities are there. I think it is very crucial to ensure that the women are also being given support, that they are also participating on those opportunities which are given to them.
Thank you so much, Archana, for raising so many valid points. Bharat, you have a question? I think then we'll take Angela's question.
Yeah, sure. I think I can ask a question. And first of all, thank you so much, Archana and Tanya, for enlightening us with your statistics and with your examples. So I think I just have this question in my mind that I always feel like, I don't have any specific question, but it's just always in my mind. The reason behind we discussed that as a man, what is the message that you would like to convey to men and how men can contribute in this process? Because it is also quite relevant, I feel. So what is that one thing that men can do positive impact when it comes to equality? So that is coming from very normal from my side. It's always rings in my mind and heart. So just wanted to know your thing.
Thank you, Bharat, for the question. Who would Tanya, would you like to go first?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I thank you for the question, but I think that is an important question. I think that the first step is just having the sensibility to be open to these kind of subjects and to see more men in this kind of forums. I think it's very helpful. I believe that we need to do this together. Like I have been to different different conferences and stuff where we talk about harassment and all of those things that we all suffer, and we all agree, like we all experience it. So we're just like, yes, I have seen it and I believe that. But the thing is that we are all in the same page because we have experienced it firsthand. And I think that sometimes that those kind of talks, they just leave the men outside, and what we need is just like the men to also be sensitive or sensible to this kind of topics. So I guess the first thing it's just to be here. So I think that is a good thing to do. And the other one would be just to question the privilege that you already have just for being a man. In Mexico, we have the subway, and I mean, I cannot go dressed in a dress to the subway, even if it's not a short dress. I cannot wear a dress. So I was telling to my father, like, you never have to think about what you're going to wear just to go outside to the street. So that is things like we waste energy as women just thinking about these things that men just don't think about. I think just trying to understand that that privilege, it's a good thing, because you kind of have this empathy for the other side of the population, for the other half of the population. And yeah, the next thing I would be, it's important to give women more spaces. So it's true that if you have a conference with 10 men, we have had conference, just so you know, in Mexico, that where they are talking about how's it called, childbirth, and just I don't know this word, like breastfeeding. Yeah, breastfeeding, and it's an all male panel. So it's like really like we even need all men to be talking about subjects that are traditionally unexperienced by women. So I think men at some point will have to step down of those positions of decision making and of power, just to make more women climb. And I also think that as women, as we get to this to these roles, we will bring more women along. So I think yes, understanding and just having this capacity of being in someone else's shoes and trying to deconstruct yourself as a man, I think that is very, very valuable, just to be like a real ally of women, not like just saying like I'm a feminist, like we should all be feminists, because I think that is starting to be a little empty words, but like really trying to understand. And I think that's just a very good step. I think also we like you as men have to be this kind of real allies that I'm talking about. But just like if you're in WhatsApp groups and you see like someone sending a nude of a woman, you have to raise your voice. Like if you don't, I think you're just part of the problem. So becoming a real ally for me means that you have to be there in all kinds of situations. So yeah, I think that's a very good question. Thanks.
Archana, would you like to go?
For me, Tanya has said a lot of things which I agree with her. So I would like to add to this is also like, it's very important in terms of solidarity, because it has to be a solidarity which is coming from your end, would be really crucial, because as women we have been raising and we have been voicing all this, but it is very important that this solidarity comes as a collectively from everyone. And apart from that, I also feel that it is also very important to ensure that to pass the mic, because it is something which has been like all the time kept with you all. Like, for example, just giving a short example which I had come across is that I was being contacted to reach out to women leaders for a legal training, and I tried reaching out to women who could participate in that legal training. Whenever I call to any of the people to send a women representative, and they're like, no, it's not important that women should be aware of this. I'll participate. and they don't need to come. And I was like, this is how, you're not letting this information reach to the women and decide whether they want to join in the legal training or not. But rather you are saying, ki, I will come for the meeting. It's fine. So this is how things is so deep rooted, that there is someone, a gatekeeper, deciding for you whether you should be participating in certain kind of event or certain kind of not event. Which then later on, I was just reflecting that most of the thing is, it's not women who do not want to participate in legal trainings, but it is people who think that I am much more beneficiary to know about that legal training, and my colleague is not important to join. And even though there is no restriction of how much member should be participating, but it's again, she's not important to participate. It's coming from there. So I think that a changing of perspective, like, we all have the opportunity, and we all should have the right to access information, is very, very crucial, because it is then only, it is also similar to in terms of representation. And that is what is very, very important, I would like to say. And also another thing is, it is very important to read a lot about information, conduct group discussion, brainstorming. If you do not understand certain thing, be open to understand. And that is what I think I usually say, that group works help, like, eagerness to learn about it, eagerness to be a free mind. And I strongly feel like Shruti has written here that understanding intersectionalities of class, caste, race, and abilities along with gender will also provide context of representation. I completely agree with this, and this is so very important, because it is these intersectionality which is again make sure that how representation has to be done.
Thank you so much. I think Angelina has a question here, and then I'll take Shruti's question. So, Angelina, if you could unmute and ask your question, that would be great.
Thank you for giving me the chance to ask my question. So my question was that, like, it's in the Indian Constitution, it's a fundamental right that's given to us, that if we feel that any of our fundamental rights has been violated, we can approach the court, right to constitutional remedies. But still, like, even the educated women, for example, if they're subjected to domestic abuse or something like that, they, do not approach the court. Or if, in anywhere, if we see someone being, their right to equality being violated, so can't there be a constitutional remedy for this?
Archana, could you answer that first, and then
what I feel at this moment is that, there are a lot of laws and policies and safeguard which is already being there in the Indian Constitution, but major issues lies in terms of the implementation and also in terms of the awareness. So what I feel is there needs to be proactive step made by the government entities in terms of pushing forward for the awareness program. And also another thing which is very important in terms of it is in terms of implementation, because a lot of perspective of the challenge which we are currently facing is that because there is so much delay and non-implementation of the safeguards, that there is also a kind of fear which is there amongst us, or it is also leading to a lot of question amongst ourselves, that if I raise my voice, will it be heard, will I get justice? So it just all comes down to that how important it is for us that to advocate for the implementation of these laws and policies, which will not only instill trust amongst the people, but will also ensure that the women are protected and these safeguard mechanisms are implemented.
I also agree with this implementation. I think we're getting, like I said, small victories in Mexico regarding laws. We recently approved, like, some feminist groups, they made up a new law that would punish the persons that would share explicit content without the permission of a woman. So if you had pictures of yourself or videos or stuff like that that you didn't agree to share, and they were shared, like that person would get, I think it's 7 years of jail, and it's called the Olympia law. So that law is already passed. Now we have to make it work. So I think it's just a matter of a lot of laws are there. Like I said, like it is a law that they cannot ask you, if as a woman, if you're planning to have a family, but they still do. So I think it's a question of raising your voice whenever something like this happens. And I think what is happening, what I see in Mexico, is that a lot of women are coming together. We used to have like this idea that that women just didn't get along together, and we just didn't work well together, and that is just starting to be a myth. And I really like that, because you can really feel that support between each other. And I think that is what is key. Just if you have a problem, that you raise your voice is the first step. That I know in some cases it's not easy if you have suffered some kind of mistreatment, but by raising your voice and then finding the support in other women, in other men in the community, I think that will make that everyone is kind of vigilant of those laws being being taken care of, and being done. So I think that is what is crucial at this point, I think.
Shruti, would you like to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you, Archana and Tanya, for the lovely conversation you've shared. So this is something I've been grappling with for a long time, especially with respect to gender representation in conservation, is to understand how do we move away from a very tokenistic representation of gender, where you have policies which says every biodiversity committee or something will have to have 33% composition of women. Except when you actually go on ground and check, you realize that even though on record it says it's a woman representative, but it's represented she's represented by her husband or her brother, and it's merely tokenistic. You also have like some conversations around Women's Day. That is when suddenly everyone wants to talk about gender, and all throughout the year it's silent, like radio silence. So how does one move away from these ideas of very tokenistic giving space for women, but not actually really seeing it in a structural level? And you also realize incidences of patriarchy and how it impacts women, especially when you relate it to conservation and biodiversity, because women are the ones who are the ones who probably do a lot of these non-timber forest produce collection. They are the ones who go and collect wild food. They are the one who knows the biodiversity around them. They are the ones who are also taking animals out for grazing, a lot of them. So when that happens, where are their voices in policy? But there will be one or two examples or one or two research and academia papers, and there's radio silence. So how do we move away from that tokenistic idea of understanding of women in conservation to a more structural, internalized idea of gender equality or equity in that sense?
Thank you so much, Shruti, for your question. I think, Archana, if you could go first, and then Tanya.
I feel the points and the concerns raised by Shruti is really, really important and really, really crucial, which even I have been witnessing. So what I have reflected and what I feel is like when we are talking about women participation in general, like I'll go down to the rural communities and the forest communities later, but in general of the women participation or the young people's participation in the biodiversity conservation or spaces like this, I think one thing which is very important is continuous engagement would be really important, continuous engagement. And when I say continuous engagement, there has to be a feedback mechanism and loop in the already existing structure of the government policy, is something which I feel important. Like, for example, if there is an event, if a certain people is invited, they participate, and then what? Because then there is not of much of follow-up which also happens, not of much of connection and engagement which happens with that particularly women or indigenous or young people. So I think a proper structure, establishment of a proper structure with continuous engagement and a feedback loop would be very crucial and important in terms of the representation and participation and constant engage is what I feel. Along with that, also a long-term benefit or a long-term engagement association is something which I feel would be very crucial. And apart from when we go down to the committees which are in the grassroots level, rightly said as Shruti, there has been instances as such, and I strongly feel that this instances can be structured only when I feel one of the way can be, ensuring that there is awareness amongst the rural communities, and awareness in terms of why the law is there, what is the law is all about. I think that would be very crucial, because unless and until we are able to understand the meaning of the law, we will not be able to participate. And this is especially which I feel or I have encountered, that most of the perspectives, whether in terms of law, is also kept hold with the men, wherein women are not being able to participate in the discussions where what is the law about, what is its implementation. Rather, women are just called for, you need to be part of this. So which again also brings me down that there has to be sharing of responsibilities in the grassroots levels, when I say, because it would be very difficult that women is also engaging in, for example, household work, or preparing household work, and the meeting is at the same time. So that conflict of interest where women will choose for the household work rather than going to the meeting. So the village level meetings or engagement should also be in such a way where the women are being given spaces. So it can happen that the village level meeting should be in a certain time where women are said that, please come and be in the meeting, and you can do your work later on, or I'll help, or so all those understanding is also very important, which comes in a more what do I say, practicality and structural way, that you cannot just say that we need women, but you are doing the meeting in a time when women will not come because they are engaged in either household work or certain taking care of the children, or in the early morning when they're going out for the field. So all these things is very important, and these all things also needs to be taken care of in the policy level and incorporated in the policy level. And when even though, like, for example, I have seen a lot of things when people come for awareness program or capacity building, people are least bothered whether women are there or not there. So, and they do the programs and they go away. But then the thing is, like, it is also very important that even people calling women, I have seen one of the thing which is helpful a bit, that because of the certain kind of hierarchy in the community members where women feel hesitant sitting with the men, or any relatives of their communities. So separate meetings with women or separate awareness programs for women, it is also helpful. And then we can have a together meeting also, so wherein special efforts for women, ensuring that the capacity buildings are there, wherein ensuring that they are able to participate in that policy frameworks in a better way. And also the policy frameworks are usually a lot very prescriptive, like it should happen this, it should happen that way. But it is also very important to understand whether there is already certain existing practices or not, or whether there is existing already committees or not. So ensuring and reaffirming those committees will be also very important. And I think this is something which needs to be reflected a lot more. And I think I will be very happy to think on those regard, like what are the other mechanisms, how we can ensure that this token participation can be more structured in a way. As of now, what I feel is it is constant engagement. and long-term engagement, and at the same time a specialized emphasis on in terms of capacity building or reaching out to the women is very crucial.
I think there I would just like to add to what Archana said, that we also have this topic about gender quota, and I have been talking about that a lot with colleagues. I organize a lot of digital events now that they cannot be physical, but I always push to have more women in these places so that they can share what they do and their experiences and stuff. And one comment that I usually get is like, we don't have to have more women just because they are women. And that is not the point. Like, it's not just to have a gender quota so that we can accomplish or get to the numbers that we're supposed to have, because that would be like cheating. That would make no sense. So what we're saying is that there are a lot of competent women, and they should be given that space and that place just so that they can develop further their talent and their knowledge. And we should give them the opportunity to fully take responsibility of that spot. I didn't know that happened, that their husbands are being the ones in charge. So I think that is just very disrespectful and just pointless. So we also have that comment here. And my point is like, it's not just to get to a number. It's because we want to open more spaces. And if we think of it historically, like, women have been held out of a lot of subjects, a lot of topics, that like not being able to vote, not being able to study. Like, men have had so much time like to get ahead. So I think like this kind of thing they say, like, oh, she's not that renowned or she's not that well known. Well, that is because we're not giving them those spaces. So it's like, we need to do that so that they become more visible, and then they can be in other events and things. So I think what Archana says, it's so real, and I think it connects to the policy thing that we were talking about. We need to have this kind of surveillance, or we need just to not keep our eyes out of this, so that it gets done and it gets accomplished in the right way. We also have this thing, like some businesses and companies in Mexico are starting to give paternity leaves, just so that they seem like more advanced, and I don't know, they want to look good in public, but in reality they are like a friend just recently got like 2 months of paternity leave, and he was like, wow, that is so advanced. Yeah, but he had like 3 days, 3 real days, and then he was being called and he was working, and he told me, I have to do this, if not I will lose my job. And I was like, well, now you know what women feel like if we don't work, like we also risk losing our jobs. So I think that is just like trying to, yes, making the policies and making all these proposals, but just making them real. But because if not, then that's not what we want. I think as women and as a society, it's not convenient just like trying to put makeup on and just that it's not real. So I think we need to, it's a lot of work, because we need to just be aware of this stuff and just keep an eye on them, so that they are being accomplished the right way and they are given continuity.
Thank you so much, Archana and Tanya, for answering all these questions. I think the Q&A has been long this session, so I think we can stop with that. And if I've not answered any question, I'm sorry. I mean, I've not picked up any question. So I think I will give it to Shruti to give the closing remarks and the final AHA slide. But before that, if you could ask all of you to just switch on your camera so Bharat can take a picture of all of this.
So by then, Jonathan will also put in the AHA slide link that can be used for just 2 more questions. Okay, we are. I think I can start. I can see the responses coming in, so I'll quickly share my screen. Okay, yeah. So the first question is, how are you feeling? Just to get a sense of how you're feeling after the session. Like, what are your thoughts? Do you what do you think of the session, or how are you feeling? Yeah, basically, how are you feeling? Fantastic, empowered. That's great. Grateful, good. Grateful. That's a good term to use. Motivated, marvelous. Empowering. It's empowering. Yeah, definitely. I think listening to our speakers, both our speakers today, I think we all feel empowered. Wonderful. Feminist. Okay. Grateful. Grateful seems to be the most popular choice of word. Fantastic. Motivated, inspired. Yeah, definitely. More confident. That's good to hear. Yeah. Aware of reality. Very true. I think they've opened our eyes to what is really happening. Even though we knew it from the beginning, I think this opened our eyes even more. Unique. True. Okay. So I'll move on to just the final question before we move to the final remarks. So what do you think now that you've attended the session and heard our speakers and all the discussions, the Q&A, what do you think gender equality means? Like your final perspective, your final understanding of what gender equality means. Can be to you, or what do you think society, how should society approach gender equality? Equal representation. Okay. Equal chances. True. Justice. Freedom. I think it can be for both. Yeah. All of these kind of say the same thing or point to the same problem or the situation that we are in. Spaces to women, true. A must social practice, okay. Same for all. Equal chances, equal rights. Freedom, okay. Giving respect is same. Passing the mic, yeah, I think we picked it up from the speech today. That's good to hear. Equal rights. Okay, we're moving quickly. Freedom of taking decision, yeah. Thank you for all your opinion that's coming in. It's really great to hear your perspective after our such session, just when we're coming to a close. All okay. Irrespective of gender, true. Okay. I think this gives a good I think this summarizes our session quite well. What we've heard over the past 1.5 hours, more than 1.5 hours, in fact. Equal chances, justice. Okay. So I'll stop my screen share now, and then yeah, and then final comments to Archana and Tanya, just to close the session. Like, where do you think the intervention is most necessary, or your final understanding, final takeaway from the session? What do you feel about the comments or the responses that you've heard from the participants? And what is the gender, like, where do you think the intervention is most necessary or most required in the current situation, the current scenario? Archana, yeah, and then we can take it to Tanya.
I strongly feel that, it's very important for us, young people specifically, to learn about the grassroots realities. And for that, I feel platform like this is like really important in bringing us all together and learning. So my one message is like, let us not stop learning or stop the desire of learning, because that is something which will help us to learn, understand, and assert our voices and advocate for women in conservation. And the second thing which I strongly feel is that connecting with grassroots communities, those who are working on conservation, connecting with civil society organization, as Shruti had shared in the chat box about Vikal Sangh, which has written about the Thingapali practices, which I said. So there are a lot more civil society organization, and many of the young people, those who are there, they are already connected with a lot of groups. So connecting with those groups, those who are already working in terms of conservation, and those who are working with women, would be very fruitful in terms of understanding the grassroots reality, which will also help you to understand not only from the textbooks or the literature, but also in terms of grassroots reality. So, going back to the community members, going back to the elders and learning from them and getting to understand from the grassroots reality is very important. And the third thing which which I feel is like speaking up is very important and contribute, because everyone's perspective matters, our voice matters. So it is very important for us to speak, and at the end it is also very important to contribute in whichever way we feel. I feel whether it is in the form of art, literature, dance, song, or any way we can contribute in any way, in terms of amplification or in terms of advocating for it. So will be like speaking up, contributing in whatever possible.
Thank you so much, Archana. Tanya?
Thank you so much. Well, I agree with Archana that I have so much faith in youth because I just think we need, like, the natural state of humanity is to move forward, to keep moving forward. And so I am just very touched to see so many young people interested in this subject. I also think that your voice can make a difference. And I think, like, we see it in different levels. Like, sometimes we feel very small because we think like, oh, policies, government, countries, the world. So it's, of course, like different layers of this change that we want to see. But we need to think that it all starts with ourselves. If we are people, women and men, that think and advocate for equality in all aspects of our lives, in our personal lives, in our professional lives, in whatever kind of service, community service we're doing, I think that shows, and that gets passed on to other people. So I think we need to think about that just we need to think of ourselves as having that power, and that we need to release that power, and we need to share that with our community. And I think now that the digital world gives us so many options, that it's just like your reach can be really huge. I would tell the women just that they should raise their voices, but they should also raise their hands, sit on the table, as they say. Like, you need to be visible, you need to share your things. I know sometimes it's hard, that I don't know if you're afraid of whatever people will think of you, or if you're afraid that it might not be a good idea, but you just need to do it. Like, it's just like jumping and just giving that first step, and you have to think that whatever you have to say, it's valuable, and you should not keep it to yourself. So I would just tell you that you have the power, and I feel very inspired, and I am very, very grateful for this session. Thank you very much, and I hope we keep in touch, and thanks for the invitation again.
Thank you so much. I think we must thank both of you, Archana, especially in this difficult time. She's managed to stay with us whole throughout the session and answer questions. So thank you so much, Archana, and thank you, Tanya, too, for joining us early in the morning, even though you're in different time zones. Thank you all participants also for joining and your questions. It has been really insightful, and we have had a lovely discussion. So thank you all, and we'll have another session soon. So that is on community conservation, youth activism, which will happen tomorrow. So hoping to see you all there again.
Thank you, everyone. Nice meeting you all. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.